Thank you, Jesus, for another great day. If you're watching and listening, friends, brothers and sisters in Christ, we're going to take a journey down one of those tough topics. Today's episode is called Facing Death. So let's get into it.
Of course, this is Resurrection Week, and this is the time when all Christians around the world celebrate Jesus of Nazareth coming back from the dead. And having said that, because by the end of the week I want to talk about the resurrection, but you can't talk about the resurrection without talking about death. And just today and I think tomorrow, I've really would like to talk about not just Jesus' death, but death itself. Now, I know, what I'm going to talk about today is just not, it's not something I know that you're going to jump up and down about. It's not something that you get excited or even that you're going to necessarily feel totally comfortable. But we've got to talk about death. You see, I don't know how many funerals and memorial services that I've conducted. I certainly have been to way more than that. And it's been my observation that people are just absolutely in denial about death. They just don't. Well, again, it's not a nice topic. It's not something that you are just going to sit and meditate about. And yet we've got to face this, and we've got to come to the reality of some things. So concerning death. So I really want to talk some things today, and I know it's not going to be easy to listen to, but I really want to encourage you to hear me out, because again, what I have to say is it's going to bring you to some thoughts. Maybe you're not even thinking about this. I also want to talk about something today specifically, and then that tomorrow is going to lead into it. But today specifically, that I think a lot of people struggle with when it comes to God Himself. But that's later on. Here in a few minutes we'll talk about that. But let's just talk about this topic of death. Death is going to happen. You've heard the phrase, there's two things in life that are certain: death and taxes. Well, I know at least the first one is absolutely true. Nobody's going to escape death. No one's immortal. All right, my life is going to end. Your life is going to end. And the Bible is very clear and comes right up front and says it in the book of Hebrews. It says, it is appointed unto men once to die. So the Bible really it does not cater to our fantasies whatsoever. It is absolutely up front. And I want to read, there's a couple of scriptures that are really interesting that I found in the book of Ecclesiastes that I want to share with you. And it's, this is the thing about death. And I'm kind of struggling today, not because I don't have things to say. It's where do I put all this together? But death is a stop. It's a stop. It's a sudden stop. It's an interruption. It's an interruption to think about it. I don't care how old you are. There's stuff you could keep doing. There's places you could still go. There's education you could still have. It's an interruption. It's an abrupt interruption. I don't care what age you are. Death is a change. And especially for those of us who remain, it's a change that is absolutely and oftentimes just devastating to us. It's hurtful. Death is painful. Death is something that we don't we don't really get pleasure out of. Even I would have to go so far as to say, I mean, unless there's a few madmen out there, even somebody who has to, like in the course of duty, has to take a life. It's not something that we glory over. It's harsh. It's final. And I think that one of the things that we have to come to grip with is not just that, yeah, it's going to happen to me. But I think we also need to face the fact that death has nothing to do with fairness. See, maybe that's the other thing that's so disturbing about death, is that it comes to everybody. It comes to the wise. It comes to the fool. It comes to the gifted person, the mediocre person. It comes to doesn't just come to the old folks. It comes to the young people as well. Death comes to great people, and it comes to obscure, absolute, unknown people. Death comes not just to the villains and the bad guys and the people that are doing things wrong, but guess what? Death comes to heroes. It comes to wonderful people. Death comes, it just doesn't come to the lazy, the person that's not taking care of themselves, the person that's wicked, strange, kind of a revolting type of person. Somebody's, just wasted their life. Death just doesn't come to them. Death also comes to the healthy and the active person. It comes to the positive. It comes to the caring person. Can I tell you that even it comes to the good people? Now, this sounds, it sounds elementary. It is. But again, how many of us are absolutely in denial of this? We don't think of this. This is not something that we consider. But you know something? There is wisdom in considering it. You don't have to think about it every day. But there is a point, and this is a great time, Resurrection Week. This is a great time to consider not just resurrection, but the event that's going to happen to every single person on the planet. It's going to happen, and so this is a good week to talk about it. It's the event before the resurrection. You can't have a resurrection without death. So Ecclesiastes, here's one of the scriptures. Ecclesiastes 7:15 says that all things in King Solomon, wise King Solomon is talking. All things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life in his wickedness. Now you just think about that. Here's a wonderful church-going guy, and he dies at an early age, and here's a guy that's absolutely wicked and doing things wrong, and he lives up into way up into his 80s, 90s, 100, I don't know. That's death. That's life, actually. That's the way it is. And I think that sometimes, for my fellow Christians out there, I think that sometimes if we're not careful, we think that somehow being good and godly somehow is a guarantee that you're going to die an ideal death. It's not. Now, I'm going to drop some bombshells here. I might even make some enemies. People never listen to this program again. But can I just tell you some facts? People that I know, some of the most wonderful, caring, good, positive, church-going, helpful people that I've ever known have died. And not just died, but they've died, if we want to use the term before their time, they've died before their time. They've died before their prime. They've died before the ripe old age that everybody would like to die at. It happens. Look, God has never given us a guarantee in life. There's no guarantee that you're going to live a certain age. There's no guarantee that you're supposed to hit this, and there's none. There's none in the Bible. In fact, I think one of the things that's almost, I would say for our human minds, it's insulting. It comes from another verse in Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 18 and 19 says, it reminds us that we die just like the beasts do, just like the animals do. Let me get a little crude, if I might. If you see an animal dead alongside of the road, that's us. I've been a hunter and I've come across remains in the woods. That's us. That's us. That's what's going to happen to us. See, we've got this fantasy thing or this thing in life. We're full of life. That's how God made us. We want to live and we've got goals and we've got everything. But friend, I'm telling you, you have got to at least at some point in your life, and again, today, this week, we're going to end this on a good note this week, but this week is a good time to think about something as negative as death. It's a good time to consider it. It's a good time to start thinking about some things that we may never have thought about. And one of them is that everybody dies. There's no guarantee. I wish there was a guarantee. I wish that somehow, I had a written agreement between me and my maker that I will live for 83 and a half years, or I will live till I'm 100. It's not going to happen. And can I tell you something else? Now, I believe in taking care of my body and everything else, and I regularly exercise, I try to eat right. I think, relatively speaking, I'm a healthy eater. But I'm not going to kid myself. I've read the Bible. I've lived some life here. And I can tell you there's nothing that you can do to avoid death. I wish you could. I wish you could exercise and avoid death. You might be able to avoid an untimely death, prolong your days. That's true. But death in and of itself, it's going to come to the healthy. See, there's no pill you can take. There's no money that you can pay out. There's no frame of mind that you can attain to, not even as a Christian, that is going to avoid death. Can I tell you something else? There's nobody that you can threaten to make death go away. It's not like you can call anybody up, the government, God. There's nobody. It can't be avoided. You can't sue anybody. You can't blame anybody. If anything, as I said, God's been up front with us. He tells you right in His Word, you're going to die. That's who you are. Dust goes back to dust. And I think one of the things that is tough to swallow about this is that death reminds us, every single one of us, that we are actually expendable. And I was just recently, I might have mentioned this last week, but I was just recently at a funeral. And again, I came to the fact that, there it is. We're all going to pass on. And I think the thing that really hurts the most is that people can go on. They must go on living without us. That hurts. Well, the opposite's true too, isn't it? We would like to think that, I can't live without that person. In fact, I've heard people in their sorrow and their grief say that. Maybe you have too. Maybe you've said it. I can't live without that person. The fact of it is you can. You have to. That is what is painful. That's one of the painful things about death. You have to go on. And people have to go on without us. We talk about people who set all these records and do all these exciting things and great things. But you know what? After you die, people are most likely going to break your record. People most likely are going to do something that's going to put, you're not going to be unique anymore. That's the way it is. That's how things are. In fact, the Bible reminds us again in Ecclesiastes. By the way, if you've never read that book, a lot of people think it's confusing. I found it one of the most enlightening books of the whole Bible. For me, it answered a lot of questions. One of them was this topic right here, death. Death. Because I've seen people, all kinds of people die. Bad guys, good guys, wonderful people, and otherwise. And so you begin to realize, I'm not expendable. I am replaceable. And something else that the book of Ecclesiastes says is that we will be forgotten. We will be forgotten. Death has a way of ending our chapter of life. We talk about, my legacy will go on. Really? Will it really? Okay, maybe you're going to get a museum named after you or everything else, but that doesn't make you continuing to live. And it doesn't necessarily affect people. See, there's some I think that's actually one of the attractions of going to memorials, is because all of a sudden you find out something that you've never known before. You have been yourself, the living person, has never been exposed to some history, some aspect of history, so you don't realize that this person did this and added this and contributed this to life. You have no clue. And really, besides just learning about it, and I'm not saying that's not important. Okay, when you go to museums and read plaques, I love history, by the way. That's one of my fascinating things. But really, when it comes down to it, everybody is forgotten, in the sense that we don't walk around keeping somebody else in mind all the time. See, when you pass away, your grandkids are going to have to keep on going. Your kids are going to have to keep on going. Your relatives, your loved ones, your friends are going to have to keep on going. And guess what? There's going to become a day when they shift from deep grief. It's hard to talk about it. They're going to shift from deep grief back to focusing on living life and a job, and they're going to laugh. They're going to have a good time, all without you. Now when they're going to bring you to their mind. People are going to we're going to bring, I don't know, other great historical figures, founding fathers and heads of this and that, or even for that matter, great-great-grandparents, and we're going to bring them to mind, and we might even have some emotion with that. But they're really not with us anymore. They can hand down a pattern and a legacy, but that really, when push comes to shove, it becomes us now. That's what's so hard about talking about death, because we want to pretend that it's something it's not. We are far. Look, these bodies of ours. Can we just bring this down too? These bodies of ours are far from being immune and invulnerable. They're far. We're as far as an existing being. We're far from being safe. If you don't believe me, just try stepping out in front of a Mack truck. Just try. Just try, forgetting about the fire that just started in your living room. Go on. You're going to be in trouble. You don't get out of that house, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to die. See, God made our bodies wonderful in one sense. Our bodies are resilient to so much, self-healing. We've got white blood cells that take away, keep away disease. But you know what? That still doesn't mean we're going to live forever. And can I tell you something else? That we're living on a dangerous planet, folks. Friend, you're living on a dangerous planet. Gravity is one of those forces and laws that make things very, very dangerous. We're living under some very dangerous conditions. If you think about it, I was just out in California last week. They're famous. for their earthquakes out there. I live out here in Pennsylvania. Now, we don't have a lot of natural disasters, but we still have floods. We still have people that get lost in our vast woods. Every once in a while you hear about somebody getting killed by a wild animal. This is a dangerous place. You never know what's going to happen. I think somewhere a long time ago I heard scientists did a study, and somebody once said, now, if I'm wrong about this, write into the show and tell me, but this is how I heard it. 50% of the time that you're walking, you are in danger of tripping and falling. In other words, every time you take a step, you have a 50-50 chance of keeping your balance or falling. That's what life is all about. And I think, and this is really what I really need to get into this today. And this is a real sensitive for a lot of people. We just a couple of weeks ago went to see that movie, God's Not Dead, and I really recommend that movie for the simple reason. This is the part that I really thought was interesting, is the fact that they brought that film to show, and it's not a true story, but it does reflect reality. But they brought this character in the film, a professor, one of the main characters. They brought out that he was an atheist because his mother died of cancer. And I know that that's true, that people that become atheists, don't love God, fall away from the faith because of cases where loved ones have died. I've actually known people who have gotten into Christians and Christian ministers, in fact, who've actually got into false doctrine because somebody in their family died. Anyway, the point is that people get angry with God because of death, because of the death of a loved one. And I don't know what else to say. I don't know how to say this, except that we need to just say it out. That's foolishness. Why are we acting as though, why do people act as though death is some sort of unforeseen accident, some sort of, something that, wow, that should never have happened? No, death happens. And death doesn't happen, again, death doesn't happen to the prepared, to the not, it happens to everybody. That's what I'm trying to say. It happens to everyone. And death is not always a punishment. We read in the scriptures, about God who brings plagues and so on and so forth. Death is death. Death happens. Look, I don't care how nice you are. I don't care what kind of a great godly person you are. You step off of a 1,000-foot cliff, you're going to die. It's going to happen. If you're exposed to certain things, you're going to die. Period. Let me just break off just a second just to tell you this story real quickly about a guy who, he was a young guy that I knew of him. I didn't know him personally. Members of my family knew him better. They'd ministered with him. Wonderful, up-and-coming, powerful young preacher. And he had basically gotten wore out. His physical body was wore out. And he had gone to the doctors, and the doctors warned him that he needed to take some time off. He was a very zealous, passionate guy, and so he was just pushing. And he had begun developing like some sort of a sickness. And the doctors warned him, you need to stay home. You need to stop. He did a lot of international traveling. You got to stop. And it was an infection. That's what it was. But he didn't. He didn't stop. He kept going, kept pushing his body to the limits. And there was one particular time that he really extended himself schedule-wise, even for a healthy person. And he came back home, and here he went to the doctors, and this infection had spread. And in just a short while, I think just within a week or two of coming back from overseas, he died. He passed away. Now, this guy had potential. This guy had things to do. This guy was a good man. He was a preacher. You can say, well, how dare God take his life? No. This guy put himself in a place of death. We're foolish, folks. We're foolish to think that somehow death is a cheat. Death is part of life. And again, it's actually one of the most consistent things on the planet. Death, as the saying goes, is a part of life. Now, in situations like that, we're shocked. We're shocked when people, especially with children, especially when somebody who's young, especially when even, I don't care how old you are as a parent, when your child dies before you, it's a shock. It's a hurt. But we can't be foolish and blame God. Death happens. That's what I'm saying. We can't walk around in denial thinking that somehow that we're just a little bit better. Right? We're not even thinking about this. Can't blame God about that. We've got to take our hurts, we've got to take our wounds, we've got to take our confusion and we've got to turn them properly. And we've got to face things. Yeah, God never tells us not to hurt. In fact, one of the things I always remind people of is that Jesus promises to walk through us, through death with us. He promises to walk through death with us personally, but I also take that scripture where it says that he will walk through us through the valley of the shadow of death, thou art with me. I take that to mean also when I lose a loved one, and believe me, folks, I've lost some really dear people to my life. I think of my wonderful grandfather, Crandall, that I love so much. I think of my Aunt Laura, my Uncle Royal, both of them wonderful, significant people in my life. I've lost them. They'll never be back again. All I've got to do is think about them, and I get sensitive. But you know what? Jesus Christ will also walk through those things. I just need to trust him. Some things in this life, look, life is frail. Life is fragile, but Jesus Christ will walk through these things with us. Well, the website here at Bible Days Ministries is BibleDays.org. And for those of you who would like to give toward the broadcast, you can go to the home page, find the donate button, or you can write, if you'd rather, BDM, P.O. Box 2515, Williamsport, Pennsylvania 17703. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about something and how Abraham Lincoln, Al Capone, Richard the Lionhearted, Victor Hugo, Leonardo da Vinci, Michael Jackson, how they all have something in common and how you have something in common with them. Friend, don't waste another minute today. God is calling you to convert to Jesus today.